Well, I'm not too sure what to do with my videos. The interest is dropping off, and as I get into the Genesis deep dive, I knew it was going to be boring, but oh my gosh, I didn't know it would be this bad. So it's just kind of ragged for me. It's like, yeah, I see what's going on. Nobody else cares, so why bother make video? Why bother making videos on it? It's lost. I got this video. It's on a game preserve, and there's a leopard and a baby gazelle. And it's got the baby gazelle trapped right there, and it's sitting right by it, and the baby gazelle, you can see it's got a chunk taken from it. It's standing still, standing right next to the lion, bleeding from time to time, trying to... And still, while the leopard is looking around, it's trying to bait the mother, larger animals, in by having this baby, and it's looking around, patting at the baby, trying to get it to make noise and stuff. And when nothing comes in, it finally just picks it up and goes. But that baby instinctively knows it can't escape. It stays right there. It doesn't run. It's hoping for the best. It's too little. It can't escape. So somehow instinctually it just stays still. But guess what happens? I think right now a lot of us feel like that baby gazelle right now in the world and what's going on. And it's so hard to reach out and find people. It's like we just crawl into corners and feel like shit. My name is Dan Paulson, and I'm watching a human reset happening. This is not the country I grew up in. I'm sorry. And the things that are going on and the amount of denial of reality can only mean one thing, is that we're over-evolving. There's got to be a reset. This is something that happens from time to time, and we're perched on the edge of that cliff. And who wins these things are, what is it really? If you stop and think about it, let's say you took three, whoever, ministers, rocket scientists, if you're listening, whoever you think the greatest three humans in the world are, put them bare naked in a lion cage with a hungry, full-grown lion and see who emerges. And I guarantee that lion doesn't give a shit about the knowledge of the skills or the abilities of the others there at all. It's a non-factor in its life and its experience. And we have different brain types, and to some level that same stuff is going on. We all feel fear. We all move away from fear and move towards joy. That drives life. And there are, so what do I want to do here in this video? What I want to do is prep for the video. Chapter 5 is Adam's analog farm. There's 3 places in the Bible: Adam's analog farm, Shem's analog farm, and the Sodom. Would you destroy it for the sake of 50? No, I wouldn't destroy it for the sake of 50. I won't destroy it. Sam, I am. That whole sing-song thing going on right there. Those 3 places are where you grab numbers, 22 numbers that appear thousands of times in the Bible. There's a pattern for people that understand it, but also if you read the Bible and comprehend certain things as you read along, it doesn't make sense. There's a point here right around that analog farm where there's a guy named Terah who has a son named, no, I can't remember who it is now. Haran? Yeah, Terah. A man named Terah has 3 sons, and one of them is named Haran. Haran actually dies before his father and is buried in the land of his nativity, Ur of the Chaldees or something like that. And then Terah dies later, and he dies in Haran. So he dies in his son, which is weird. And you would read that and go, how does that make any sense? There's a way to process this where it makes sense, but if you read it at face value, it doesn't. You can ask most people about the Bible. They'll have to go look and read that, and they're like, you have to comprehend at that level to understand something that's goofy in there. At this point, it's important to state that I'm looking for a template in here. I'm going at this very objectively. I'm not trying to prove anything except to demonstrate that there's a pattern that is in the background that I see, that I've analyzed. It's in a numbering system, and I want to talk about that. That is important because that numbering pattern continues all throughout Abrahamic material. I want to teach in this. I realize it's very complicated, so what I wanted to do here was start at a very small scale and show how they're starting to grow the numbers. I think the brain has to gradually grow into this. It did for me, so as I'm dumping things out here, as I find them, I'm realizing, I don't have it collated quite right yet, and I think I'm overdoing it when I teach. I'm just dumping too much out. So what I want to do is talk about what they're doing with numbers. All right, this is something I just wrote. I'm starting to work on this now, and here we have it. Ancient story code. What is it and how to detect it in the stories? I will tell you that this is in all of Abrahamic material. If you sit and watch and pay attention, you'll see that it is big, it is deep, and that we do not know it. You have to spend a little time to observe it, though. It doesn't just emerge Like today. I mean, you open a door, there it is. If it's not there, it's not there. No, it's there. But they were doing something at a much deeper level than we are. So please know to begin with, it's not going to show up easily, but watch what's happening. I want to add this in. Even though I can see this, I'm learning that only certain kind of minds can see it, that there's a certain way that brains work that are kind of the introverted feelers that have something different going on that can kind of see both directions, that don't just see one direction. There's a greater sensitivity. There's something else that's going on is all I can say. People that have told me before that, oh, what you're talking about, that's been completely debunked. What I'm going to say right off the bat is if you tell me it's been debunked, that means you're relying on somebody else to tell you whether it's there or not. You can't see it. All you're doing is passing along somebody else telling you that it's not there. So that person doesn't know either. That's the blind leading the blind. It's there for those who can see it. Most people cannot. That's the truth of it. Repeating numbers, sequences. That's what we're going to be looking for here. All of Abrahamic material in the Bible, as well as valid apocryphal works, use this man-made pattern as a means to navigate the story. It is not complicated, but it is foreign to us and very huge. I see it kind of like a net holding the stories in place. There's a numbering pattern in the background that, just give it a little bit of time. There's a reason for it. There's an important reason for it. These play out in the mind, so that is the only way we can view this. What that means is in addition to having the story memorized, you would also have thought through the story mentally until you knew how many times all of the nouns and verbs have been repeated. This is how the code is passed along. People today are nowhere near that biblical skill. The other option is using the computer to show us what we don't know. That's the process I'm using. I simply use the navigation bar in Windows to search this out. I will record and show you these numbers as I go along. It's shallow, but the only way I can convey this with our shallow grasp, actually. Using the computer, I mean. We can't talk about it in terms of, do you remember that part where this was said and that was said? We don't. We have to go pull up the Bible to go see that. In antiquity, they could just sit there and talk about it. Oh, yeah, this happened, that happened, and so did this many times. And they had these really deeply memorized. Noah's name repeats in Genesis 41 times, for example, which aligns with, this is big. Marduk's name is repeated 41 times in the Babylonian epic, the Enuma Elish. They both serve the same role on the human life template, hidden behind different creation stories. Think of a book of fables on steroids, then a whole gym or library full of them. That's the Bible. The genre is religious is all. The nested teachings are identical globally. Karma, or cause and effect, is exactly the measure you mete unto others will be likewise meted unto you. Both interpret to mean cause and effect. These are meaningful, but only if understood and interpreted at the layer of the teacher's intention. These should be mentally active when you get done with them. This is an inner healing pathway for the true seeker. You do not relinquish. You take charge. Turn inward and learn to control. That's enter the narrow gate. All right, so as we get into the numbers, this is what's important to know. The numbers is hard to unwrap from. The numbers do not represent numbers. They're analogs. They mean something different. I got a note to myself there. Teach this clearly. I've done that before, but I think I understand it better now. They replicate approximately 20 template steps, which continually repeat in the background. The template represents a stepped path of constant self-vigil and working through our memories that we carry, which hurt our life and keeps us from connecting from our higher self, or what the religion calls God. God is an analog for this mental state of awareness. God lives in heaven. God is our higher awareness that resides above the memories and does not feel controlled by them. We need to get there mentally. The masses will not. They will worship the religious arc, or deny that it has any viability whatsoever. What I'm doing is neither of those. These are on a template. What is that template? That's what the teacher put in here. The template is what is inside. We enter the narrow gate. That's crossing the threshold or turning inward to our memories. Okay, so what I want to say is, first of all, in number combining, what they're doing is simply something like this in its simplest form. If I put 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 right there, that's 3 said 7 times, and 7 is said 3 times. Both of those right there would give me they don't have to be together, but they cross-reference each other. If just one was by itself, I could say, that 3 is said 7 times, that means 3 and it means 7. The 7 was said 3 times. So it means 7 and it means 3. What do we have down here? These were repeated the number of times to reflect each other. 3 repeated 7 times and 7 repeated 3 times is how they make them the same analog. They're combining the two by doing that. They're saying 7 and 3 mean the same thing. The last day of the 7-day creation. What we have is on the 7th day, God ended his work which he made and rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it because in it he had rested from all the work which God had created and made. Both 7th and God are repeated 3 times right in that section right there. Langton even, it's a deeper layer, but Langton even made sure that that was on verse 3 when he put verses in there. He's trying to point us to this numbering pattern here. I realize now he's not hiding anything. He's actually trying to point us to this. His numbering pattern, it eventually emerges as something that is definitely valuably there. You see that 3 is also where that 7 is. And that this right here should have gone with the first story, the first creation, and then the 7th-day creation, and then the 5 rivers starts afterward. What did he do? He shifted it to go here to make sure that that was on verse 3. It also helped hide an overlap, but I mean, yeah, okay. So in its simplest form, that would be the code. I've used examples before that I might say something to you like, meet me on 9th Street. It's been a while since I've been to 9th Street. I'll see you when you get to 9th Street. And then that goes by messenger and you read it and go, oh, that means 3rd Street. Actually, that's not exactly what they're doing. They're making them both the same thing. And that 7 right there occurs parallel. The 2 creation stories exist parallel, naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden. That's a starting point in life where we are pure children. Now, that starting point in life can be referenced on the template as 3. Female, inner, 3 daughters. 7 is there. You could set male, pure state. 7, pure sons. What happens when you get to Job? He starts right off with 7 sons and 3 daughters. We see the process start beginning to be used in the stories. Right off the bat, they're going to be using it in Genesis to grab other numbers. The 3 and the 7s right there are going to continue to show up. But what they're going to be doing now is using those numbers repeated surrounding other numbers to gather those numbers, but then those numbers are repeated a certain amount of times to cross-reference. It starts sounding thick, but it's not. It's really just getting thicker and thicker versions of this. And let me make sure I explain. What they're doing is they're taking a 3 and the 7 now. They want to repeat this pattern over and over again, but they can't just keep using 3 and 7 in Eden. They need a bigger pool of numbers. So they're using the 3 and the 7 to go out very specifically in a patterned process to gather up other numbers. And when we find what that is, when we go through these analog farms, we begin to see them. For example, if a 7 and a 7 surround a 70 in, what is it, right, chapter 4, right at the end of chapter 4, that 70 is gathered up because it's surrounded by 2 7s. Now, when we get down into the analog farms, it's doing very complicated versions of that. It's getting bigger and bigger and thicker. It gets a layer deeper like this, but if we don't treat these as compound numbers, I'm going to show you something. You see the 930 years and he died. That sounds like 930 years old. If we're just looking at numbers and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm building a number grid. I need a 900 and I need a 30. I see that 30 appear elsewhere, but I don't see a 930 appear elsewhere. Why does a 900 there? That doesn't sound right. And if I go here and look, I see that 900, which doesn't make sense, is repeated 7 times in Genesis. It's being used as a surrogate 7 to go out and gather other numbers. So you take that 900 right there and say, all right, I got it. Grab the 30. What about, let's go the 800 down here, because those are big numbers. We have exactly 7. So the same thing is going on. So we see the 800, and there's a 7 right there. We already have a 7. There's a 900 and there's a 12. We're going to grab that 12. There's a 800 and a 15. We're going to grab that 15, and so on. We're going to use those first numbers as pointers because they don't actually mean years. They're code. It means 7 is here. I'm going to grab a 90 and a 5 and a 30 and a 40 and a 5 and a 70 and a 15. And I'm going to keep doing that through all of the other analog farms. When I get down to Sodom, what am I going to see? I'm going to see right here in this analog farm that righteous, which is the repeating thing, that's what we're looking for. Righteous is said exactly 7 times here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right in this analog farm. And what do we have? We have 50 being said 4 times, repeated 4 times. We have 5 being said 3 times. We have 40 being said 3 times. we have 30 being said twice, 20 being said twice, 10 being said twice. And then Abraham and Abraham down here ends out the analog farm as a repeat. There's 5 Abrahams right here in this same analog farm, which is also one of the numbers. If you took this entire section right here out, from here down to here, this analog farm, the story would read just fine. This was plugged in just to grab numbers, just to create numbers. And those numbers, the 50, 40, 30s, are the same things we're collecting elsewhere. And we collect them also in the flood story. In 7 days I will make it rain for 40 days and 40 nights, and in 7 days it did rain for 40 days and 40 nights. It's all code. It's verbal code. That 40, the 7, those are the numbers we're gathering up. We separate them. We don't treat them as a compound number. We separate all those ones out. Later, after we've gathered them, we can recombine them. They can become compound again, which is what you see in the list right here. If you see the numbers that we've gathered right there, take a look at the beginning of each and every one of these as we look at them. Before I go on, I need to say that what they're doing in the male and the female here is a mental hierarchy. As we're taking this internal path, the male is the consciousness, the female is the inner self or the bundle of memories. What shape is that in? The female is typically what is acting out in all of that, because it's our bundle of memories. The consciousness is what is having the experience in life, storing them that way. It's in charge, but it doesn't know it. It's living life through emotional means until it understands what to do. The male and the female here represents pure self in these states. This is the beginning of that template. Adam, Eve, that's the 3-7 start. We've gathered up a 70, a 5, and a 17. Abram was 75 years old when he started, and Sarai's name is repeated 17 times in the book of Genesis. Isaac was 40 years old when he started. His name is repeated 80 times exactly in the Bible. Rebecca was 30. Job, 7 sons, 3 daughters. You always see there's a male and a female component. That's the mental hierarchy, conscious and subconscious, and it's going to numbers that reflect that pool, which means pure state. That's how they're spreading it out and making it look like it's not repeating when it actually is. I want to do a quick parallel example. We're going to go to Ezekiel down here. So Abrahamic material. Is this good stuff? Let's take a look at it. In the 30th year, the 4th month, we have our 30 and we have our 4. And in the 5th day of the month, this is a pure state, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity. Now right up here, I want to note something. 5th was said 3 times. 5th is repeated, 5 is there, 30 and 4 are in our pool of numbers. We're going to start from a negative place. Do you see that river Chebar? This is going to be a monomyth, which means we're going to have to make a crossing. The crossing is going to be a difficult crossing. If I come here, if I knew the story well enough, I would know that Chebar was repeated 8 times and steps into that realm on the list of first sin, where first sin happened. But when we get here, we're not looking for what is different in these stories. We're looking for what is the same conceptually between them. They don't sound like the same thing. Going through a flood does not sound like crossing the river Chebar, or crossing the Red Sea, or sailing through the clashing rocks, or going through a baptismal, or going through the mouth of a whale. All of those, however, are crossing a threshold into a void. You have to look at the similar concepts, but you can see right here, those numbers are used. And they're not only used in our face, 30, 4, 5, 5, 5, that right there. Those should be the ones we see all the time. The ones we don't see are things like Chebar. Oh, that's 8 times. That's a bad place. That helps us navigate the story, but we don't know it. Now, I find that it is incredibly common for numbers to cross-reference themselves as well. That continually happens. Not only are the numbers used, but it's repeated a number of times that either replicates itself or another one of the numbers throughout. And let me show you what that means. I'm going to go all the way down to the book of Matthew, a very tight numbered book right here. Matthew is very dialed in, and I'm going to show you what I mean there by how the numbers continue to point to themselves, almost in this network, this web kind of a way. You have to be able to see it in your mind. If you can't see it in your mind, you can't see it. The numbers even popping them up, but showing them to you, you can say, well, they match. But if you can't see how they connect, I think I think it's something that's just going to escape many people. All right, with the book of Matthew up, there's some things I already know to look for right off the bat. I did not know this to begin with. I would just start experimenting, playing, curious. At some point after going through a few books, I began to notice patterns that were much deeper than I had ever seen before. And that's what I'm showing here. So I've got a few names highlighted right off the bat. But before I get to these names, I want to show you that cross-referencing numbering system I'm talking about. We'll come back and look at the names in a second. All right, number 3 is one of our good numbers. And 3 is repeated exactly 12 times in Matthew, which is also one of our numbers. So we have a 3-12 matchup. They're not only parts of the grid, but 3 is even said exactly that amount of times to make sure that lineup is still staying there. 7 is another one. It also is said exactly 12 times. 12 is another one. It also is said exactly 12 times. Okay, so throughout the book, I mean, things like that, is it accidental? Could it be accidental? I want to go back and look at a couple of other things now. Remember back here we had the names David, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judas. We've got to have a good beginning and a negative element to start from. David. This is throughout the book of Matthew. 17 times. Same amount as Sarai in Genesis, huh? Abraham, exactly 7 times. Isaac, 4 times. So far, so good. Jacob, exactly 6 times. So far, so good. And now we've got Judas, 8 times. There we have it. All right, it's going to go on from there. It's going to continue to get bigger and thicker and thicker. That's just barely touching the surface. That's just starting right off the bat. It doesn't warm up. It doesn't happen from time to time. It doesn't happen sporadically. Here, Jordan, baptized of the Jordan. 6 times, Jordan's a good thing. Baptize. Exactly 10 times. That's purification, isn't it? Yes, exactly. How about worthy? It's just a random word there. That one might not be. 10 times. Well, what do you know? Water. 8 times. Wow. Okay, water is where things emerge from. Water is a crossing. Repent. I don't know why that's 11. That one surprises me. Maybe not. Circumcision is a day 8 thing. Repent would be like circumcision cut off, get rid of. 11. Yeah, you'd have to go through the story for analysis, but it does make sense if you think about it the right way. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It means you have to resolve something that is bad. You've had first sin, now it must be resolved. Repenting is like circumcision, yeah, cutting off, metaphorically. Repenting is something that you need to do. Repenting means really getting rid of actually the things that you're hanging on to. Okay, stones. Or just stone. 13. That's not good. Well, one's millstone, actually. I don't know if that matters. That would make it 12. Anyway, if you continue to go through here, you would see that it is not a few words here and there. You would see very starkly that it's, oh my God, there is a tight network of repeating going on here. But then navigating that is a different, it's really, really deep. It is incredibly incredible. It's very intense stuff, but it has to go upstairs. It has to be seen by the person doing it. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's a saying in the beginning of a Chinese teacher, a guru's book named Lao Tzu, and the teaching from the Tao Te Ching. It's a very short book. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. You have to keep working that through. You would think, well, then what do? It's nebulous. People think that way. But no, that's not thinking it through. The Tao that can be told, the pathway that can be told is not the eternal path. What is the eternal path? It's the pathway that's taken. There is an eternal path. And you can talk about what that eternal path is, but talking about it only presents it academically. Not unless an individual takes it themselves does it become experiential. Not until then is it the true Tao, the true path. The true path is one that you take. Knowing what to do is meaningless. Doing it and healing is okay. I remember this person one time in this kind of spiritual group that was not quite making it sometimes. Be like angry at other drivers or something, and somebody might comment, you might be adding more into that situation than there need be. And I think we were all kind of intense. And the person would be like, oh, don't you think I know that? You're like, well, maybe you do know it, but you're not doing it. You're not living it. Well, that's just one example. But I'm sure I myself am probably constantly guilty of the same thing. Ego gets in our way. Anyway, I wanted to show that as I get ready to do the video on the numbering pattern coming up. It's going to get deeper into that, and it's really, I don't know how deep to get into it. I can get way too deep, perhaps, and I don't know how much I should do. Honestly, the numbers that we looked at there, like if you were to look at one of those sentences, all right, I'm thinking that this is going to be too thick to go into. Guys, let me know what you think, or I don't know what to do on this. If I go through and take a look at the sentences here, as I get into the analog form, and Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness, and after his image, and called his name Seth. I started going through these sentences and breaking them down and getting rid of all of the words, getting rid of all of the superfluous verbiage, and only listing down the number of repeats of the nouns and the verbs, the names, and other repeating things. And this is what I'm coming up with. 7, 7, 6, 77. In line 25, there's a 7, 6, 9, 7, 6, 1, 2. Then we get a 7, 6, 7, 2. This is repeats. And down here is what I'm doing. You can see that Adam has been repeated 6 times, so I've got that there. Day is repeated 12 times. God is repeated 6 times. Likeness is repeated 3 times, and God again is 6. So this is the number sequences that are constantly, if you look at them, they are always the same numbers from the same pool held in repeating nouns and verbs. These numbers this is a pattern numbering system that's really just telling us to gather up these numbers. Yeah, look at how much we're having them point to each other. It would be you would never know this unless you had it memorized, and even then, you would have to know to look for it. You would have to know that there are things in there that's sequencing. You'd probably start and find a few and just keep digging in like I am. You find a few and then you keep digging and go, oh my God. What is this? This is all the farther I went with it, though. You can go up here and say, well, we don't need to go that deep with all the names. You can just pick the 900 grabs a 12. 90 does what? You'd have to have Enos and Canaan in there as well, and maybe begat. Enos, 90, begat, Canaan. 90 by itself doesn't mean much. What is Enos? Enos is 6, so that's good. So we would have a 6 and a 90 and what's a begat? Boy, I don't know. That one I think I would like to leave out because there's too much of that going on. That one might just be an incidental term there. Okay, so the other one was Canaan. Canaan is 5. Cain adds 2 to it to make it 7 total, but Canaan is 5. So that there you would have a better numbering grid than just a 90. You have a 5, a 6, and a 90 are all what is really on that line right there. That's what's truly there, not just a 90. So you see, how deep do you get into it? It's all about a numbers game at this point. It's grabbing up that numbers, and this is what makes the rest of it accurate. Although right here I can already see that I don't have to keep doing it. I see that they're making it in a mental way so that there's a lot of access to it. I can look at it and go, okay, yep, I don't have to worry about those other numbers. I don't have to know Enos and those other things. Maybe you can move on a little bit quicker. I think that it could be a very dry thing, although it is incredibly, it's the core code. Who's interested in that? Ancient verbal code in all Abrahamic material that started or emerged from Babylonian material. It may have started before then, but the same code is found in Babylonian material. Well, I could go on with this, but I think it gets repetitive and actually the channel's dropping off and everything, so I'm not sure what to do. You can interact with the material, but it's actually rough to, I get to a point where I focused on taking care of my judgments in life to live a better life and got really happy. But we're at a point in time in humanity where you look and go, shit, I don't want to see this. So you're stuck kind of looking at stuff that you become aware of. You realize, you want to live too, but you're a part of humanity. And if you don't care about humanity, you don't care about yourself. What do you do? Well, see you in the next video.